Hello neighbors, it's Brad here from Etrailer, and today we are taking a look at installing the Blue Ox Trailer Hitch receiver on a 2025 Chevy Trailblazer. Now this is what your hitch is going to look like when it's installed on your Trailblazer, and it's a really clean look because it's going to be a hidden cross tube. All of the hitch really lives behind the rear fascia and behind the bumper beam, so really all that's left to see is going to be the receiver tube opening and the plate style safety chain loops. Now, being a 2" by 2" receiver tube opening is going to be a great option because you have tons of options of accessories, bike racks, cargo carriers, and ball mounts. The standard is kind of 2" by 2". So when choosing those, you'll have lots of variety to pick from, and all of those are going to stay in place with a 5/8 pinion clip. That is not included with the hitch, but a lot of times when you're picking up accessories, they'll have a pinion clip included, and something I'd recommend to anyone that's planning on leaving accessories on long term is a locking pinion clip. If you have your bike rack on for the season, you can leave that locking pinion clip in place, and it's a really good deterrent for anyone walking by. They can't just take out the pinion clip and take that bike rack with them. If you plan on towing a trailer, you're going to be hooking up safety chains to your safety chain loops, which it's going to be really easy. It's nice and open there, so a standard S-style hook or even a larger clevis style will go on there with no problems. And speaking of towing, you're going to want to adhere to the weight capacities of the hitch, but also check the vehicle's owner's manual to see what it's capable of towing and then compare it with the capacities. This is rated pretty decent. You have a gross trailer weight rating of 3,500 pounds, and that's going to be the weight of the trailer plus the accessories loaded onto it. Your tongue weight rating is going to be the downward pressure on the inside of the receiver tube opening, and more times than not, it's going to come into play for suspended accessories like cargo carriers and bike racks. And this one's really good. It has 525 pounds, so that really equates to a 4-bike bike rack loaded up. As long as they're not all heavy e-bikes, or a cargo carrier on vacation shouldn't be a problem. Now, some accessories like cargo carriers and bike racks can stow in a vertical position, and to make sure that it works with this vehicle and not make contact with the fascia, we measure from the center of the hitch pin to the furthest point of the fascia, and this one's coming in about 4.5 inches. I don't worry too much that you'll have issues, but keep in mind when they're in that stowed position, you're probably going to block your license plate, potentially your rear camera, and also when you go to open your hatch, you will need to drop those down. Another important measurement is going to be our ground clearance, and not that I worry that the hitch is going to hit the ground, but this is important for choosing a ball mount. And from the top of the receiver tube opening to the ground, we're coming in right at 12 inches. So a few things. If you are going to pull a trailer, you want it as level as possible. So if you want a fixed ball mount and you know the trailer that you're going to tow consistently, you can measure from the ground to the top of the coupler of the trailer and then compare that with the 12-inch that we have on our hitch. Doing that math should determine the rise or drop necessary, and I would probably guess that you're going to have a slight rise configuration. Now, chances are you're watching this video because you want to see how this installs. Quite a few steps here and there. None of it's particularly hard, but if maybe you don't have the time, the place, the tools, or even the want to do it, I totally understand, but don't let that hinder you from getting a hitch on your Trailblazer. If that's the case, you can find someone close to you by using our dealer locator. You simply put in your zip code, you'll find a list of shops close to you that can get the hitch installed. That way you don't have to worry about it, and you can be out on the road enjoying adventures. If you're a DIYer and tackling this yourself, stick around, I'll walk you through step by step. Let's get this hitch installed. The first step to getting this fascia taken off is going to be removing the taillights as it kind of integrates all in place. And pretty easy to do here. You'll find that there's going to be 2 caps on each taillight. The small slot allows you to get a small flathead screwdriver to pry these back, and that's going to give us access to a T15 screw on each of these slots. So we'll do this on both sides of the vehicle, and we'll get these removed. And what I'll do is give it some pressure, just using grip from my hand, and just kind of bump this along, and until it shifts out, that's what you're looking for. Now with these, they're LED, so normally you'll have a clip. There is one that's tucked behind the grommet here, but it's pretty tight in there. So what we're gonna do is kind of let the taillights hang. We're not at the point yet where we're removing the fascia, so what we'll do is just, we'll have them loose, just have these set here, but it might be worthwhile just taking some shop towels and wrapping around if you are gonna let it hang later on. That way nothing's getting scratched or damaged in the process. Going down from our taillights, we have our screws that are located right here. There's going to be one on each side. Again, a T15 is going to get that taken out. Now we'll head to our wheel well liner on the back side where it attaches to the fascia, and we're going to find 3 T15 Torx bit screws. Now you may have mud flaps on yours. If that's the case, there's just a few more steps to get those taken off. The wheel well trim that we have here, we are going to be popping it back because there's a screw that attaches the fascia that's located right about here. Now it's just a series of plastic clips, and sometimes they can be a little bit tricky and they can break. So a few ways to do this. So what I'll do is I'll pull back, and this kind of interlocks with the lower section here. And as I pull this back, the main thing is don't peel this back too far or at a harsh angle, because you can create a crease here and more than likely that's not going to be coming out. So sometimes what I recommend doing is if you can reach behind this liner, some of the clips you can kind of pinch, or your other option is just to kind of work as close to the clip as possible as you pop this out. And sometimes you can also use a trim tool. So there's these ones were fairly easy to do, and I could gain access to this 7 mil. So if you're able to do that and you have a small ratchet, you can absolutely stop here. If you wanted a little bit more access, a trim panel tool works really well here. There's a section down here that you want to be careful because it can rip off the mounting point on these. And mine ended up staying in the vehicle, which I can pop that out and slide it back in. But once we're pulled back this far, this gives us plenty of room to get the screw out and also remove our fascia in a little bit. So what I'll do is roll up some paper towels and just put this in here to create that wedge to keep that space there for us. On the underside of the fascia, we're going to find that we have 2 7mm screws here on each side. So we'll get these taken out. And we also have this T15 Torx screw that's right next to those 7 mils, so we'll get this taken off. We're also going to have 2 plastic push pins on each side. They're right behind the muffler, and these we're just going to find the slot, and using a trim panel tool, this helps kind of prop these out. You get that center section pulled down, and generally you can remove the whole thing at once. Now if it separates, just make sure you have both pieces, and you can also use a flathead screwdriver. You don't necessarily need one of these. We're ready to take our fascia off, and I've gotten Dan to help me here. So we're going to work on each side first, and it's going to get a little bit unique because I don't want the taillights to just be hanging down while we do this. As we start to pop this out, there's going to be a few clips underneath the taillight. Once we get that loose and pulled back, we should be able to slide that taillight back in place into those alignment tabs, and it should hold it in place. So what we'll do is pull back that fender liner just a bit to get your hands behind the painted rear fascia spot. And as you work your fingers, just keep pressure along these clips. And you'll see it's actually fairly easy to get these undone. So as I pull the taillight out, you'll see where they're clipped in. And as long as we get this raised up and over and kind of pull this back, that's what we're looking for. So as I pull these back, raise this up and get a little bit of space here, we might be able to slide the taillight back. If not, you might want another assistance to hold this while we get the fascia off, and then they can slide that back in place. There's also going to be clips on the back side here. They are going to take a little bit of pressure to pop off. Don't be surprised if you have to put that pressure on there. But as I have this pulled back, I'm going to just take my taillight and slide this back into place. And as I mentioned, the clips here, these just kind of latch in here. So that's what's kind of holding that in place. And there's some clips that popped out here that snap in. That's where we had some of that pressure. Now we're going to want to separate our plugs from our fascia so we can set it aside. To do that, you're just going to pull back on the red tab, push in on the tab, and we should be able to get this to separate. Sometimes these can be a little bit tricky. So I have the one here, and then Dan's working on the other plug, so there is 2 of them total. There we go. And sometimes if they're tricky, push them back in while holding that tab and then pull, and sometimes you'll have a little bit of luck. So now we got both of those separated, we're going to set our fascia aside. We're going to pop these off from our bumper beam, so just trim panel tool, this will get that popped out, because we are going to be removing this and it's going to go back in place, but we don't want these in the way and holding our bumper beam up, as we need to get our hitch in there first. We're going to focus on cutting off some of our sealant that we have along here, which I started doing, and that's just kind of, it keeps everything adhered. It's a body seam filler here, but we want this to be separated. And in order to do that, we're going to need to cut some of that back. So using either a putty knife or a utility knife, just go along the edge and cut that seam to separate it. Now we're going to be removing the factory nuts that are on the studs that hold the bumper beam on. And we're going to be reusing these, so keep these handy. And a 15mm socket is going to get these removed. So we'll get all three on each side taken off. We're going to need to pry the beam off. So what I'd recommend doing is either a pry bar or even a flathead like I'm using here. And this is going to find out pretty quickly where we need to cut a little bit more. So if you're getting a ton of resistance, you can start finding those seams where you need to cut. And I'll go through and start cutting mine off until we can get this removed, but don't be surprised, this stuff's on there pretty good, so we'll just kind of work at it. And careful not to put too much pressure here. This is just a thin piece of metal, so we really don't want to bend that. So if you can go near the studs, that's generally going to be a safer place to do that. Something else you can do is take a dead blow, and once you feel like you've cut a lot, if you're still struggling, just give it a nice hard hit and that'll kind of loosen it up. Now I got this side off pretty easily, and this side I can start to peel back until we get that removed. And now we can set this aside just for now. The plate on the hitch where it bolts up to this is a little bit larger, so any of this excess here, we're going to want to take a putty knife, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but we're going to want to try to get this cut down so it's going to be nice and flush against the metal. So I'll go through and start scraping this off. Now with that all scraped off, we're going to be putting some silicone around this, so that way when we put the hitch in place, it's going to create a nice gasket and not allow water to get into the frame. Now in the instruction manual, they say 100% clear silicone. I'm sure that's going to work, you know, according to what they want, but an RTV black silicone is what I have, and this is going to work just fine. So we'll just make sure that it's a nice continuous bead, and in these gaps here, just make sure that it fills up, and once that hitch is in place, it should squish this down and make sure that it's going to be nice and sealed up. You can grab your hitch, and we're going to slide this over the studs. And it's a bit of a tight fit here. It was tight on the studs. If you use a dead blow and just kind of smack on it, you want to be careful. We don't want to damage our threads. In order to get this to slide on, that's kind of what I had to do. Something else that they want us to do is take a little bit of RTV silicone or the clear silicone and fill these gaps up. Now's a good time to also make sure that we have this as centered up as possible. So I'm just using our hatch release and just kind of giving it a nice visual down, and just use that dead blow to knock that along and get it up as centered as possible. Now we'll grab our bumper beam and we're going to slide this over those studs. And you may have to kind of slide it over. Mine was catching on this portion of the frame there, or of our hitch. And at this point, I'm going to get our nuts in place. And I may have to scrape off a little bit here, but we'll get these hand tightened on, and then we can come back and snug them down. And with that 15mm socket, I'm going to snug these down. We don't need to get crazy here because we are going to come back with our torque wrench, but this should draw everything together. And also, if you're having trouble trying to get any of the nuts started, you don't have enough thread, if you can get one started and cinch it down, that should draw everything in for you, making it easier for the other studs. Now you're going to want to grab your torque wrench, and the settings are found in the instruction manual, and we'll go through and get these all torqued down. Now if you need a torque wrench, you can generally go to an auto parts store and rent one for free. But this is going to be an important step, mostly because you're using factory studs. You can over tighten these and cause damage on those studs, but also you want to make sure it's tight enough to be able to use your hitch long term. We can put our plugs back on the bumper beam, and we're going to be doing a little bit of trimming just to account for our receiver on our fascia. So that's going to be the next thing. So grab any cutting method you have, whether it be an angle grinder, multi-tool, whatever you have handy, and we'll make these cuts, and then really it's just getting the fascia put back on. Now as far as trimming goes, they don't really get a depth. It looks like they just follow this flat edge on the bottom and they give you the width. So I'm going to cut this out. Sometimes it can be a little bit off and we can always trim a little bit more as necessary, but this will get us a good starting point. So I'm using a multi-tool, get a nice clean cut, and the painter's tape is just good reference to keep a nice clean line. Now we're going to just take a file, kind of clean up these edges. Now we can grab our fascia and install it in the reverse order that we took it off. Make sure you get your electrical connections all put back in, as well as your taillights. As I put my fascia on, I found out that I do need to cut back a little bit more. The way that I did it was I did a relief cut until it pretty much sat flush with the where the receiver meets the bottom part of the hitch. And so I just kind of cut straight back. It ends up being, I would say, about 1.5 inches, give or take. If you need to, maybe cut 2 inches. You're really not going to see a huge gap or anything like that, but that's going to allow the fascia to kind of sit a little bit, well, how it's supposed to. If you're watching this before doing the installation, I would recommend past that lip that we used as that reference, another 1.5 inches, and you should look pretty good. Now once everything's back in place, you have all your hardware tightened down, all that's left to do is load up your accessories and you're ready to hit the road. Hopefully this video helped you get the hitch installed on your Trailblazer, and if throughout the process, if there's anything that I missed that you want to leave a comment about, that really helps me make the best video possible for neighbors like you that are installing hitches at home. Your feedback really helps us. And also, if you have it installed during the process, take some pictures, but also if you're out on adventures, let us know how it looks and what you're doing with it. Beyond that, that was a look and installation of the Blue Ox Trailer Hitch receiver on a 2025 Chevy Trailblazer.